Welcome to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. It's Wednesday. That means it is time for AMA. That's where you get to ask me anything, and I will answer the questions. Obviously, some things I might not know the answer to, some things I can guess at, some things I do know the answer to, but, that's how AMAs go. You ask me anything, and I come up with answers. Of course, it's supposed to be things that I would know about, and again, if you're interested in knowing what I consider to be my fields of expertise, I would say media creation, like news of the day, current events, politics, and ballot access. Those would be, like the fields of expertise. Ask me things about those, my opinions about those, or really my opinion about anything. But, sometimes people don't necessarily ask my opinion. They want to know, like, what is, there was a question one week, what is the plural of oasis? And I was able to find out that the plural of oasis is oasis, but spelled with an E instead of an I at the end. So I've got 3 questions this week, and all of them are very good. Very good indeed. So let me begin with the first question that was actually asked before I posted the thread, calling for questions. I had posted on Facebook asking last Friday if I should talk about Cuba or there was something else. I forget what the other option was. And someone said, I'd really like to know how it is that government officials try to claim that they are doing what's right, or rather what's best for the economy, even while they restrict trade everywhere else. And I said that would be a really good question for the AMA. So that's the first question that I'm going to tackle this week on the AMA, is why it is that government officials try to claim that they are doing what's best for the economy while they restrict trade everywhere possible. And really, you have to look at the nature of politics to really understand the answer to this question. Because you have people that wind up getting elected to office who they turn things around on its head to where, by the time they get done talking, black is white, yellow is purple, left is green, and chicken salad is a vegetable. Well, because it's got the word salad in it, right? So obviously a chicken salad has to be a vegetable. Even though, the primary ingredient is chicken, it's still a vegetable in some sort of weird, messed up way. So what they do is, and they being the politicians, is they wind up turning around the word best and say, well, it's best for us if, and then they come up with all of these things like high tariffs or, union protectionism sorts of things, saying, well, nope, if there's a union, then you have to be a member of the union in order to have this job. So therefore, that's best for the economy, right? Because if you're not paying union dues, then that union boss isn't going to get his salary. And then you're not going to wind up getting all of these exorbitant benefits. So it's best for you if you join the union, because then, really you get priced out of any other job. As we've seen with the car manufacturers, you wind up having employees that, there's not enough work to be done, but they can't be fired because the union has rules on certain things, so they pay people to go in and do crossword puzzles. They're not actually paying them to do the crossword puzzle. They're paying them to just be in the building because, well, we can't give you the day off because we still have to pay you, so show up to work and then just sit here for 8 hours because there's no work for you to be doing, so just sit here. And so, some people will do crossword puzzles, other people read magazines, whatever, but they're essentially being paid to do nothing. And we were told, well, this is best for the American economy because would you rather have these people be laid off and collect welfare? And it's one of those, it's a question to where, there really is no right answer because it's a flawed premise. The premise is if the person isn't being paid to do nothing at General Motors, then they would be collecting welfare. Well, no, there are a lot of other options. The person could wind up, getting a job at some other manufacturing plant where there actually is work. The person could go get a job, cleaning toilets somewhere. The person could get a job working fast food. There are any number of things that the person could be doing other than getting paid to do nothing or collecting welfare. But I repeat myself. So once you realize that politicians, manipulate the definition of best and say, well, it's best for us, not best for everybody as a whole, it's not best for society as a whole, then that's when you can realize, or rather understand, how it is that they claim that they're doing what's best for the economy while they restrict trade, or they create these things called a free trade alliance, sort of like the NAFTA and CAFTA and GATT, where there's hundreds of pages in this treaty that creates quote-unquote free trade, but it doesn't really create free trade. It creates free trade in a few small select fields, but for the most part, it's restricting trade and it's regulating trade. It's not creating free trade. Free trade does not require a treaty. Free trade requires governments getting out of the way. So let me go back and actually answer the question how it is that government officials try to claim they're doing what's best for the economy even while they restrict trade everywhere else. And I've kind of answered it, but not exactly. I've answered, like how they're claiming that they're doing what's best by, manipulating that. But why is it, or rather, I think I answered the why. So how is it that they do this? They manipulate the words, and then a lot of people, they don't fact check and they don't pay attention to the slight differences in minutia of some of the words, and then they get caught up in the weird false option question of, would you rather this person be paid to do nothing or collect welfare, taking up more of your tax dollars? And it's similar to the question of, do you want to fight them over here or fight them over there? Well, that premises that there has to be a fight, and I don't think that there does. And I realize that that's not exactly the same, but at the same time it is, because they spend millions upon billions of dollars on war and claim that that's good for the economy. There's more when we come back on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. Hi, I'm Darryl W. Perry, and I need your help to take Peace, Love, Liberty Radio on the road. In the spirit of Motorhome Diaries and Liberty on Tour, I intend to take the message of peace, love, and liberty on the road. I intend to leave New Hampshire at the conclusion of the New Hampshire Liberty Forum and return at the beginning of PorcFest. During the 104-day trip, I'll be visiting at least 10 cities across the country, speaking to people about the ideas of peace, love, and liberty, while continuing to produce daily Liberty media. Pensacola, Florida, Austin, Texas, Sedona, Arizona, and Denver, Colorado are already on the map. If you have a college group, a local Liberty on the Rocks, or other Liberty meetup that you'd like me to visit, you can possibly add your event to my calendar. To find out more about the tour or to donate, visit tour.fppradio.com. That's tour.fppradio.com. You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and numerous supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $3 per month or any amount of Bitcoin per month, thanks to the recurring payment options provided by Coinbase. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's fans.fppradio.com. Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. Now, I'll get back to the AMA questions in just a moment, but first, I want to make sure that I tell you about Roberts & Roberts Brokerage. Since 1977, Roberts & Roberts Brokerage has been a trusted source for buying and selling your investment-grade precious metals. They now take Bitcoin for precious metals purchases and have permanently removed the minimum purchase amount for all orders paid in the digital currency. Call Roberts & Roberts Brokerage today for knowledgeable advice on investing and a forward-thinking approach to new technologies. That's 850-478-5270 or online at rrbi.co. So the next question from the AMA, I said on Monday's show that I don't know of any non-coercive governments. Is my BitNation one? And they actually tagged them on Twitter. The actual name is BitNation, and I'm somewhat familiar with BitNation, and I'm somewhat familiar with what they're trying to do. And I would answer the question by saying that BitNation is trying to be a non-coercive government. I would not say that they are at that point right now. And they might be, but as far as I know, and what I know about them, I don't think they're at the point right now to where you could say that they are a non-coercive government. They're certainly trying to offer, some sort of governance. They're trying to do this by putting all sorts of contracts on the blockchain. And it was very much hyped that there was going to be the wedding on the blockchain. And that was going to happen during the Coins in the Kingdom event. That was one of the Bitcoin events a couple of months ago. And the way they were doing this, there's a couple of different ways that you can put things on the blockchain. And I'm not, one of these super technical people, so I'm going to use, words and phrases that I understand. And hopefully that means that, the people that aren't super technical people will also be able to understand it. And the people that are really technical, they'll know what I'm talking about, but, they'll get mad because I'm not using the proper terms. So anyway, on, for instance, blockchain.info, there's the option when you send a Bitcoin transaction to where you can add a public note. And that, it's not adding it to the actual blockchain of Bitcoin. It's adding it into the ledger to where it's attached to the transaction, but those notes, there's a way that they can be turned off. There's a way that they can be erased. I don't know how they can be erased, but I've heard that they have been in the past. At least some of the notes have been erased. Some of the notes, or rather, at times, the function of notes has been shut off completely. And that is what happened during that blockchain wedding, where there was a problem with spam, and so the development team of Bitcoin decided to shut off the note function. And so the wedding that happened was never actually registered on the blockchain because notes had been shut off, but they didn't realize that notes had been shut off, so they still added the note. And so long story short, that wedding as far as, BitNation is concerned, the wedding didn't take place because it's not registered on the blockchain. The other way that you can put something onto the blockchain is to run the blockchain, the program itself. I think there's a different term for it, like the blockchain QT or the Coinbase QT. And I don't know exactly what QT stands for, but that's basically you're running the software. And, you don't have to run the software to use Bitcoin. There's, web-based wallets. There's other sort of, wallets out there that don't require you to actually run the blockchain technology, that every time there's a transaction, you're basically downloading this huge file. But if you are running that thing, like I said, I believe it's called the blockchain QT. Somebody please correct me if I'm wrong. And I know that somebody will. So if you're running that, there's a way that in the back end, through some sort of weird technical thing, you can basically eliminate a Bitcoin address, the wallet address, from existence and replace it with whatever note it is that you want to add. And then that is permanent, unless somebody winds up getting the private key and then changing it to something else. But, the probability of someone being able to hack the private key to change whatever it is that you did, it's, statistically impossible to do, or rather improbable. Let me say that, it could take 100 million years, so it's not necessarily impossible, it's just very improbable. And that is another way that you can actually add something to the blockchain itself instead of just adding a note to the blockchain. And there was somebody that wound up doing this with a bunch of addresses, and they added in basically a picture of Ben Bernanke using text. So it's what they call ASCII. I don't know what that stands for. I just know that's the term that's used for basically when you make something out of text. And someone created what they call ASCII Bernanke. And that is permanently on the blockchain. That's not one of these notes. So if you pull up the blockchain using the blockchain program, then you will be able to see this. You will not see the public notes doing it that way. So, there's the argument about whether or not BitNation is actually putting stuff on the blockchain, and from what I've heard, they're not. They're putting it in these public notes. And again, that's not really a fail-proof method, but that's not really the question. The question was whether or not BitNation is a non-coercive government. And my answer is I think they're trying to become one, but I don't think they're there yet. And just sort of a little bit of background, if you will, for what I meant when I said non-coercive government, because it could be argued that any church organization is a government because people voluntarily sign up for membership at a church, and then there's rules that they say they're going to follow, and if they don't, they can be kicked out. Same thing with fraternities and any number of clubs. So it could be argued, depending on how broad you want to take the word government, it could be argued that a chess club is a government. And I wasn't going that broad with my term. And I'll explain when we come back in the final segment before answering the final question of this week for the AMA, which is Ask Me Anything. If you've got questions, send them to me. AMA@FPPradio.com or on Twitter @Darryl W. Perry, #AMA. The Doublespeak Dictionary by Leslie Starr O'Hara satirizes the marked difference between the ideal of we the people and the reality of we the elite, while offering an insightful glimpse into the clockworks of the totalitarian mind. Ever irreverent but never irrelevant, the Doublespeak Dictionary serves as a subversive and humorous but timely reminder that the emperor has no clothes. The Doublespeak Dictionary is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores. Hi, I'm Darryl W. Perry, and I need your help to take Peace, Love, Liberty Radio on the road. In the spirit of Motorhome Diaries and Liberty on Tour, I intend to take the message of peace, love, and liberty on the road. I intend to leave New Hampshire at the conclusion of the New Hampshire Liberty Forum and return at the beginning of PorkFest. During the 104-day trip, I'll be visiting at least 10 cities across the country, speaking to people about the ideas of peace, love, and liberty, while continuing to produce daily liberty media. Pensacola, Florida, Austin, Texas, Sedona, Arizona, and Denver, Colorado are already on the map. If you have a college group, a local Liberty on the Rocks, or other Liberty meetup that you'd like me to visit, you can possibly add your event to my calendar. To find out more about the tour or to donate, visit tour.fppradio.com. That's tour.fppradio.com. Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. So, what did I mean when I mentioned coercive governments and non-coercive governments on Monday's show? Well, I'll try and be quick because I definitely want to get to the third and final question for the AMA this week. But let's first start off by defining coercive government. And let's just look at the United States of America. Whether or not, I'm sure somebody's going to say, well, the United States is a corporation, not a government, because the government was overthrown in 1871. It doesn't matter. It honestly doesn't matter because there's still a president. That guy still makes decisions. There's still a U.S. military that goes and kills people. There's still an FBI that arrests people. There's still a CIA that arrests people. It doesn't matter if they're acting on behalf of the official United States government or if they're acting on behalf of the board of directors of the corporation called the United States of America. Doesn't matter. What does matter, and what everyone can agree on, is that the United States government claims that by you existing in land that they claim jurisdiction over, that you are consenting to their existence, and that you are then consenting to all of the rules and regulations that they come up with. That's a coercive government. A non-coercive government would be an entity like what I had explained in Monday's show, what happened in Ireland for nearly 2,000 years, what existed in parts of what is now Saudi Arabia for several hundred years, to where there were basically overlapping entities that were not tied to geographical areas, that in some ways were governments, but people chose which one of those they wanted to abide under. And now some of those could have acted coercively, some of them probably not, but they were not tied to geographical areas, and they had recognition. That's the main thing, is the recognition of legitimacy. And I know that there are going to be the people that say, I don't care about whether or not it's recognized as legitimate. I just want it to exist, and then, I can live where I live and abide by these other rules. And here's why I say that legitimacy matters. Because if whatever entity you're claiming is your government, if it is not recognized internationally as being a valid government, then whatever government claims jurisdiction over the land that you live, they are still going to try to coerce you into abiding by their rules and their regulations. And as far as I know, no country that exists in the world has recognized any of the things done by BitNation as being legitimate. And while there's certainly the argument to be made that, try to live outside of governments and act like they don't exist. At the same time, that could wind up getting you thrown in jail. And, if that's what you want, if your purpose of life is to, make a martyr of yourself and go to jail, then, fine. That's what you should do. But, I really don't like being in jail. I don't want to go there. And, I'm not saying, abide by every dictate of any government. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying make informed, intelligent decisions. And if you're going to say that, you're part of some other nation, acknowledge the fact that there's still another country, the U.S. government, if you live in the U.S., or the Canadian government, if you live in Canada, or whatever national government that there is that exists in the land where you live. They are still going to coercively say that you must abide by all of their rules and regulations. That's just how it is. So the difference being that in a non-coercive system that I envision in my head, and hopefully other people envision in theirs as well, is that there would be the recognition of legitimacy, but there would not be the coercion of, no, you still must abide by X. So I would, again, back to the question, I would say that BitNation is trying to be a non-coercive government, but they lack the legitimacy. So I would say that they are not. So let me real quick answer the third and final question this week. Why do so many libertarians and anarchists think it's okay to ridicule, mock, belittle, etc. people of faith? In my opinion, that is an act of aggression. And that's a very good question. And it goes to something just a little bit deeper. And that something just a little bit deeper is how you define aggression. And, it could take hours of conversation to come up with a definition of aggression. And there's a lot of people that claim to be libertarians or claim to abide by the non-aggression principle that say, as long as I am not causing you physical harm, that I have not aggressed. And I would disagree, because there's certainly mental abuse, there's verbal abuse, there's all kinds of things that can be done that affect someone mentally that I would say definitely is an act of aggression. But you have a bunch of people who, quite frankly, are a-holes that want to claim that they can do anything they want up until the point of actually causing someone physical harm. And I would say that those people are basically being advocates for bullies' rights. Saying, well, no, you can, do this whole I'm not touching you thing all day, and that's not provoking a response. I'm not provoking you by saying I'm not touching you half an inch from someone's face. And I would argue that the I'm not touching you thing at some point, and that point is different for everyone, but at some point, I'm not touching you becomes an act of aggression, even though it's not physical force. And that's a distinction that a lot of people don't want to make. They want to say that, well, aggression only means physical force. And I say no. Aggression does not only mean physical force. If a parent every day tells their child, you're worthless, you'll never be anything, you're no good, I don't know anybody in their right mind that would say that that parent is not being aggressive and harming their child mentally. I don't know anybody in their right mind that would say that. But yet, people want to do that as adults and say, well, I didn't hurt you, I didn't harm you physically, so therefore it's okay. And I really think that this needs a bigger discussion, and hopefully it's something that there could be a discussion about, let's say, PorkFest or Liberty Forum. Hopefully that happens, because I think it's something that definitely needs to happen. This has been Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Happy holidays.